I can tell you the things I like the most are the way it's all laid out in such an organized fashion. Parents need help, and even, well, in the 80s and 90s, they didn't have a lot of different options that they were aware of. And some of them, a lot of them, were really punitive and punishing. And so to get active parenting has just been a breath of fresh air ever since, because it's got so many new different options that aren't taught in our society. I mean, we know this is good stuff, but it doesn't come naturally because we were often parented in another way. Nancy Spence. I started taking my first parenting classes in the 1980s, and in 1989, became an active parenting representative for Arizona, and later got Nevada also. I got so passionate when I taught the classes and saw the huge impact they had on parents. And I just was so excited about just our general active parenting program. And then I've been doing it ever since. The first version in 1988, that's all they had. It was one program in a red box called Active Parenting Discussion Guide or Discussion Program. And so it was still laid out kind of similar, but it was the first edition of this one. This is still my favorite because it's so general. It'll apply to anybody, anywhere. Because the skills that we're teaching in active parenting, it's not just parenting skills, it's managerial skills and human communication skills and life skills for just doing all these things that make us more positive and interesting people to get along with other people. So I see that general program covers so many different things. And when people come to my class or my trainings, they'll come to the training. Usually I would do it 2-day training. I would do 2 full days, 10 hours of intensive training. And I would go through all 6 weeks of that general program. And I would say by the second day, about halfway through, they would just come up to me and say, "Oh man, this is just really amazing stuff that I've never seen in this way before. And it's changed my life already in just one day." And that was the other thing. I was going back to my very first class. What I remember most about that class with the 35 parents is at the end of the class, after 6 weeks, the parents were lining up. There was at least 10 or 12, 15 people in a line to give me hugs and thanks for doing the class. That's really sweet. I just like the way it's so laid out in an organized fashion that it's replicable. Anybody can do it as long as they put a little effort into practicing it. Practice, practice, practice. And then you practice the skills in your own family, and it changes your life because you see a different way of looking at the world through that lens. And I always start the class with the video instead of having, okay, now everybody introduce yourself, because that's immediately putting them on the defensive or getting them nervous. So I tell them, I say, come on in, we'll start the class, let's get right to it. We're going to start with a video of introduction, and I turn the video on, and then after a while, I say, we'll have introductions later. After a while, then sometimes even right before the break, that's when I will have more discussion and let them interact with each other and share. But first I want them to get their hands on the material. I want them to get really excited about, oh, there's some more other ways we could do this. So that really helps. Home activities, I do the same thing because if I never say, okay, who did your homework? Because that's like setting them up for failure or excuses. Instead, I'll say, okay, we're going to talk about your home activities right before the break. And first of all, we're going to do all this practice and getting everybody on the same page with the positive things they can do. And then right before the break, I put them into small groups of like 3 each, and 3 groups of groups of 3 or 4, and they get to share in a little set. They don't have to share with the whole class. And so I try to give them a lot of options and give them opportunities, but it's not anything that we're going to force them to do. But by the time they get to that point in this class, they are ready to share. But it'll be more appropriate sharing if they've had a lot of practice first with the material. Being prepared with the leader's guide for as far as leaders go. I mean, first couple of times I was teaching it, I was just reading the leader's guide over and over and over, just to make sure that I didn't have to read in front of the group the whole, and do it too rigidly. I wanted it to be more organic and me just talking from my heart and giving examples. But I had gotten so familiar with the leader's guide that I felt real confident when I did start my classes. The challenge is got to be getting them to come back over and over again. So you'll have a whole bunch of people at your first week just to check it out and see what you're all about. And so then if they don't come back to the second, I actually tell people in the training and in my class, in week 1, we've got a lot of things to cover just to lay the foundation. And I'm going to be doing most of the talking so that you get a really strong foundation before we move on to week 2. And then so my job in week 1 is to motivate them to come back for week 2. And then when they come back to week 2, I'm like, so just pouring on the love, like, oh, it's so great to see you again, and we're gonna do this. And I also give them handouts, even though you've got your book. They could get their book at the first week, but I think handouts that I just created myself are just post this on your refrigerator and practice these skills at home, and just really live this moment by moment. And also show your handouts to your children so they can be an active participant in the whole family thing. And so that's one of the other things I do to keep them coming back. And then if week 2, they don't show back up. So let's say we have 25 people at week 1 and we only have 15 people at week 2. I will call every one of those 10 people that missed and say, oh, we really missed you. I hope you can make it next week. And I think numerous times that has made all the difference, because like, oh, wow, she really noticed. I didn't show up, so I better show up next week. And I also, encourage them about what we're going to cover, and don't miss it. And that's always makes a difference.